Tobey Maguire almost didn't play Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2. And he could have been replaced by future Mysterio actor Jake Gyllenhaal. Spider-Man 2 hit theaters 20 years ago this week, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. Sam Raimi signed on to direct Spider-Man 2 immediately after finishing Spider-Man 1. Raimi and Tobey Maguire love Smallville, so they hired Smallville writers Alfred Gough and Miles Millar to write Spider-Man 2. The first Spider-Man movie opened to a record $115 million in the US on May 8, 2002. And Sony announced that there would be a sequel that weekend. The sequel was originally going to be titled The Amazing Spider-Man, and Sony set aside $200 million for the budget. David Koepp, the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible, and the first Spider-Man movie, was then added to the writing team. He wanted to do the Gwen Stacy storyline, and yes, he would have killed off her character halfway through the movie. In September 2002, Michael Chabon was hired to rewrite the film. In his version of the story, Doc Ock was younger and was in love with Mary Jane. Sam Raimi then took all of the parts that he liked from the various drafts of the screenplay and put together a shooting script with Alvin Sargent. Raimi focused the story on Peter struggling with his responsibilities and took inspiration from Superman 2, in which Clark Kent similarly gives up his powers. The movie borrows from Doc Ock's comic book debut, If This Be My Destiny, as well as the 1967 storyline, Spider-Man No More. But Raimi changed a lot of Doc Ock's backstory and his redemption arc. Doc Ock was actually going to be in the first movie, and Raimi had designed the character and everything, but it would have been too cumbersome to that film, and because Raimi liked the character, they kept him for Spider-Man 2. So what happened with Tobey Maguire almost leaving the franchise? After filming Seabiscuit in late 2002, Maguire was struggling with a pre-existing back condition. And Sam Raimi said in an interview in 2004, he had heard if Maguire injured his back further, the actor could have ended up paralyzed. The studio allegedly thought that Maguire was using this as a stall tactic to get more money. So it seems Sony then started hunting around for another actor to play Peter Parker. Some sources say Jake Gyllenhaal was cast as a replacement, while Gyllenhaal himself said in 2019 he was one of a few actors being considered. Tobey Maguire was dating Jennifer Meyer at the time, and it was her father, Ronald Meyer, head of Universal Studios, who helped Tobey regain the role and secure a salary of $17 million. Maguire also underwent tests to make sure that it was okay for him to be filming with his back condition. The line in the movie, "My back," is an inside joke referencing Tobey Maguire's back issues. Ed Harris, Chris Cooper, and Christopher Walken were all considered for Doc Ock, but Alfred Molina got the part thanks to his performance in Frida and his large physical size, which Raimi thought was true to the comics. Molina didn't even know he was a strong contender for the role prior to getting it, and this is hard to imagine now, but the reaction to his casting was actually pretty mixed. Cameos in the movie include Bruce Campbell, and of course Stan Lee, and then a lot of notable people played small roles, including Joel McHale, Hal Sparks, Emily Deschanel, Daniel Day Kim, Asif Manvi, John Landis, and Phil Lamar. Principal photography kicked off in April of 2003, 13 months before the movie was due in theaters. And the production was massive. The movie shot on more than 100 sets and locations in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Doc Ock's lair was inspired by and meant to evoke the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It took 15 weeks to build and was 60 feet wide, 120 feet long, and 40 feet high. The movie used Spider-Cam technology to capture Spider-Man's POV for real when he's swinging. It's essentially a camera on really long wires that can move through massive spaces. At times, the camera would drop 50 stories. Spider-Man's costume was improved for the film with bolder, richer colors, the logo was enlarged, the eye lenses were made smaller, and it was given better movement. The fire and explosions in the burning building scene were real and not created with CGI. Likewise, Doc Ock's suit was also made practically, and consisted of a corset, a metal and rubber girdle, a rubber spine, and 4 foam rubber tentacles, which were 8 feet long and altogether weighed more than 100 pounds. Each claw was operated by a puppeteer in a chair, while the tentacles required 4 people each to operate. Alfred Molina named them Larry, Harry, Mo, and Flo. Flo was the top right one and got that name because it was operated by a woman grip, and it performed delicate tasks like putting on his glasses and lighting a cigar. But when the tentacles were walking or carrying Doc Ock, that was done with CGI. The CGI tentacles were scanned off the real ones to match, and Raimi preferred to use the practical tentacles whenever possible. As a joke, Willem Dafoe came to set one day and did a scene as Doc Ock with the tentacles. The sound designers used motorcycle chains and piano wires to create the sound of those tentacles. For the train scene, a second unit crew started out by filming a real elevated train in Chicago, just to capture the background footage of the city flying by. They then brought actual train cars to a blue screen soundstage so they could shoot as much as possible possible on top of and inside and on the side of real train cars. And then they blue screened in that footage that they had captured in Chicago. Real actors and stunt people were used to create most of that sequence. The film's visual effects supervisor estimates that only 10% of the sequence was made up of all digital shots. So yeah, real stunt people did stuff like this, sometimes 90 feet in the air on wires, and the lead actors also did wire work throughout the movie, including 70-year-old Rosemary Harris. The moment in which the passengers stand up for Peter was intentionally meant to evoke the unity in New York after 9/11. And actor Phil LaMarr said he was surprised that the extras really carried Tobey Maguire. He told Slash Film, "I ain't never seen a bunch of people barely getting paid anything carrying a dude worth $20 million. I was like, oh damn, I figured they would bring in like 6 stuntmen in there to carry Tobey." Reshoots for the movie carried on into December 2003. Danny Elfman was then brought back on to do the score for Spider-Man 2, but he and Sam Raimi had a falling out during post-production, and Elfman later called Spider-Man 2 a miserable experience. Sony announced that Spider-Man 3 was in the works 3 months before Spider-Man 2 even came out, and the train scene was the last thing that they finished during post-production. That whole sequence ended up costing $19 million. Spider-Man 2 then opened on 4,152 screens on June 30th, 2004, making $88 million its opening weekend domestic, before going on to do $788 million worldwide total. It broke the record for biggest July 4th weekend. The DVD would sell 11.6 million copies, grossing $174 million in the US, and critics loved the movie. Today, 93% of the 276 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive, and it's frequently listed as one of the best superhero movies ever. Spider-Man 2 was nominated for 3 Oscars: Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. It won the last one, which ironically was presented by Jake Gyllenhaal. AFI named it its Movie of the Year, and the video game Spider-Man 2 was released to coincide with the film. It sold 2 million units across Game Boy Color, GameCube, PC, PlayStation 2, and Xbox.